Welcoming you to a life of awareness, the Presence Project is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kersner.
Hello and welcome to episode 99 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now. And I want to thank you wholeheartedly, sincerely, and deeply for joining me in this precious, powerful, beautiful present moment. The title and topic of today's podcast is If That Then is a Game of the Ego. I've decided to share some insights into some of the games that the ego plays and how easy it is to get lost within the ego traps. Existing within this dimension, the third dimension on Earth, means that you're constantly contending with that loud voice in your head. And I've spoken about this voice many times in the relationship that exists between you and that voice, your ego. And I've provided a lot of insight and tools into how you can change that relationship and how imperative it is and how that's all done in the present moment. It's not an easy road, but it's a very essential road, and it's not one that is going to happen overnight. It's a process. Your ego has been so dominant for so long that it is basically the CEO of your life. And we're talking about demoting it, which is not an easy process at all, but it's an integral process as you really learn who you are, as you're more present with the things that are happening for you. There's a program, or a game I like to call it, called If That Then. And it is something that the ego does, and it really slips it in quite mischievously into a lot of the thoughts, a lot of the projections, ruminations that you have on a daily basis. Some people really spend a lot of time thinking about the past, and there's other people who shoot themselves into the future, and then there's people that do both. Very rarely are you able to maintain a state of presence all the time, especially with all the things that are happening in the present moment. As much work that I do with all the presence tools that I have and constantly talking about presence, it doesn't mean that I'm always present. It means that I'm aware, but I also understand how challenging it is to stay present. But the beauty of not being present is that it allows me, to see what's happening with me and then to work my way back to the present moment. But I want to shift into talking specifically about the If That Then program that your ego likes to play. It goes a little something like this. If I do this, that will happen, then I'll be happy, or then I'll be okay, then I'll be safe, then I'll be this. It's a 3-step process, and it is loaded with self-inflicted suffering because going from if, that to then, it is never a smooth transition. It relies on your projection about what might be, and it is full of fallacy. But how often do we go through life and say, if I just do this, then this will happen, then this? And it's a game. And it's a very interesting, intricate game that your ego will play and other people's egos will play for you, to you, and with you. And it starts very early in childhood. It has a lot to do with societal programming, but also the way that people are raised with their parents or guardians. If you just do this, then that'll happen, then this. And it's not true. And it has very little to do with the present moment and everything to do with the future or the past. Because you could also look at and review the past and say, well, if I just did this, then that would have happened, then I would have been okay, or then I would have been happy, or then I would have achieved whatever it is that I thought that I should have achieved. Again, these are presence obstructions. The if that then game, it is a significant presence obstruction that your ego will play over and over again in a variety of different facets and different ways with different words and different tools and different people and different things. It's a lot to handle, and it's a lot to understand and review and pay attention to. The fact that I've decided that this is the right present moment to share it with you means that I've seen it for years in clinic, as well as when I reflect on my own ego and the way that I operate. I've seen that I've used this many, many times within my own reality. And I've also been able to see objectively how much suffering I've created for myself based on the if-that-then game, the if-that-then ego program. Being present allows you to see it for what it is. It doesn't mean that you're automatically going to catch it or change it. But the beauty of being present is at least you can achieve the first few steps, which is observation. And being in the state of observation, it can be a lengthy step for many people, the people I work with, the people I mentor. And it's important that you stay in that state of observation for as long as need be. In fact, sometimes we never really leave that state, or that step, because it's so important. We need to stay there, and it's not helpful to start adding on to doing all these extra things and figuring out all these quote-unquote problems. It's more important to stay in a state of observation, to see things for what they are, to watch your ego, that loud voice in your head, to see the programs that your ego is running against you, not for you, to see the programs that other people's egos are running against you, not for you. I know it could seem like an attack, and in some ways, it really will appear in that frame. But it's just another ego game. It's an ego program. It's part of societal programming in the matrix. It's a negative motivator. And we've talked many times about the negative motivations that have been instilled and programmed within you to get you to do things. It's a control mechanism. And how many control mechanisms exist within this dimension? So many. And the ego loves control because it knows that, first of all, you can't control anyone or anything. You can't even control your own body. And when you realize that, and you have to come to terms with that, it creates a lot of self-inflicted suffering because there's all these doubts and frustrations and pressures that you experience at the hands of your ego. And the if-that-then game is quintessential in creating a lot of different scenarios that will always lead you to a place of suffering. And sometimes you will cause other people to suffer based on your if-that-then games, because it's not just you're using it against yourself, sometimes you're using it against other people, and that's a tough realization. That's a tough truth to honor and to live, is to be able to reflect on your behavior, to be able to reflect on your ego and your own reality and take ownership over it. Being present is not always a feel-good experience. It's not supposed to be, because there's a lot of growth points, and you're not going to grow when you're comfortable. You're going to grow through discomfort. And sometimes those moments are extremely challenging and filled with adversity. If it's used in those moments, is going to create more adversity and a lot of self-inflicted suffering at the hands of your ego that's not really necessary. So it's important that you zoom out as much as you can to observe that voice in your head, that loud voice in your head, and the games it's playing, the if-that-then game. And it's going to happen more than you would like. It's going to happen more than you think, especially as you start to watch the games and the projections and the words and the ways and the control mechanisms that are constantly being floated within your head, between your ears. This is a very interesting and pivotal point. This program needs to be uprooted and uninstalled. It's not helpful at all. It's by definition a negative motivator, and it's a fallacy. The if-that-then, it never works the way that it's projected to work. If you go from the if-that to then, the then never looks exactly the way that it was made to seem. And it's rather unfortunate because a lot of people go through their whole lives being dominated with a program that is very similar to this without knowing what it is and why it's being used and the suffering that they're experiencing based on this program alone. Because the then happens over and over again, and it's never the way that they perceived or had hoped. It never gives them the peace that they were looking for. Peace is not somewhere outside of the moment. Peace is within the moment at any moment, no matter what you're experiencing. It's a state of being and it's a state of mind. And you can get there by being present, by seeing things for what they are, by watching your ego and any resistance that you're experiencing. You're not going to be in peaceful moments. It doesn't mean that you can't be in a state of peace. Yes, I understand that concept and that statement is difficult to wrap your head around. But there are a lot of people going through a lot of adversity and rather challenging times. And there are moments that can be peaceful. It depends on how much work you're willing to do within yourself. It depends on if you're watching your ego. It depends on if you're in a state of acceptance, no matter what is being presented to you. It is a matter of catching the ego programs that are being used against you and dissolving them. I know that saying it like that might feel like I'm trivializing the experience itself, and that's not my intention at all. The intention of this podcast and all of the podcasts that preceded this is to give you a different perspective and perception of the constraints that have been built within your own psyche, and how it's time to see them for what they are, to let go of them. And we do that through observation. We do that with our presence tools. We do that because it is the only pathway to making the most out of each and every present second that is gifted to you. And whether you know it or not, each present second is a miracle. And it is what I consider to be a gift. So my suggestion, when we look at it like that, is to make the most out of each gift, not to squander them, not to set them aside with the expectation that there's going to be more. And I'm not trying to put you into a state of lack. I'm trying to put you into a state of presence so that you understand the importance and significance of every present moment, of every present second, and how you should cherish them. Because there's no guarantee that tomorrow will ever happen. That's an assumption. And if you keep on using a program like If That Then, you'll be constantly out of the present moment trying to get to a future moment that hasn't happened yet. The future is in your imagination, and it is typically the realm of the ego. Very rarely can we use our imagination without the ego showing up and altering our perceptions of what could be. Now, if you're present, you do have the potential to do that. But you have to be very careful, because when you use your imagination, especially in regards to the future, you're losing all the moments that exist within the present moment. And if you're being dominated by your ego, and your ego is using the If That Then programs and what I consider ego games, it becomes very difficult to see things with clarity and to be in the moment. I hope that this podcast specifically was helpful, because it really does shine a light on a program that many people are suffering with that aren't really aware of it. I wanted to put words to it. I wanted to spend some of my present second sharing my personal experience, my clinical experience. I mean, I've sat in front of thousands of egos over the past 13 years. And the If That Then program is so prevalent and insidious and built within everyone's ego. And specifically about the programming that exists within this society and this dimension. So please, I do strongly suggest staying in that state of observation, not being hard on yourself, being as objective as you can when you're looking to dissolve a program like If That Then. It takes time. It's not a one and done. It's a process, but you could do it. You just have to be dedicated enough and be aware enough that it's an ego game. It's a game that's derived and implemented to steal your present seconds, to steal your present moments, to give you this idea that this then is better than the now that you're in. So it's always such a tremendous honor to spend my moments with you, and I wish you nothing but peace.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.